What's up, everybody? This is Grant with Smoov, continuing to put out content that supports you in reclaiming your strength, athleticism, and physical freedom. Today, we're jumping into a topic that I know you're interested in because most of you have subscribed to this channel through one of these workouts. That's right, we're jumping into Primal Movement, and I'm going to share how I view Primal Movement. This is a more complete picture. I think you're going to see a lot of connections here that are going to show you just how valuable this stuff is from a training perspective, sure, but also more of a movement and lifestyle perspective. I'll also be sharing a few different ways that you can get started or continue to progress with Primal Movement. So let's say you've gone through a few workouts on this channel, you like the Primal Movement. I'll give you some options on how you can progress pretty quickly and also establish a really solid foundation with your movement practice. All this leads to reclaiming that strength, athleticism, and physical freedom in your life. So let's get into this video. I want to start this video off by getting some accuracy on what Primal Movement is. Let's answer it early on here, and then we can get into some of the other stuff. If we get some definition on what primal means, like if we just look at the definition, here are some of the terms that come up: original, primitive, essential, fundamental, being of greatest importance, primary. That also means what comes first. And that what comes first is really going to set the tone for this entire progression that I'm about to talk about here. If you ask yourself, who taught you how to move? Well, I'll just tell you the answer. You did. Gravity had something to do with it. The ground has a lot to do with it. Our biology, it's baked in. So we have this blueprint for human movement. And if we look at a lot of that blueprint, that really lays the foundation for what is most important. And through this process, we not only develop our movement capabilities, our body awareness, but also a lot of brain development, the ability to interact with the world, interact with other things, other people. It's actually a process of becoming more independent. When we are infants, we are technically incredibly powerful because we have so much possibility, kind of like a blank canvas, right? But at the same time, we are incredibly powerless. We are dependent on our parents. We are dependent on our community. A lot of resources are required to raise a child. As we continue to develop our movement capabilities, that allows us to become more independent, allows us to become stronger, and we gain that physical freedom. And that is something that might scare some parents. I know my brother and his wife are dealing with a 6-month-old, and she's about to start moving around a bunch and gaining a little bit more independence there, which requires a lot more nurturing and attention. If we take inspiration from that blueprint, we're looking at being on the ground in prone and supine positions, breathing, starting to explore the environment with head and eye movement, starting to grab and reach for certain things, and really starting to interact with our environment. Then we start to take this into some locomotion with rolling, coming into that quadruped position, doing some rocking, crawling, and then eventually coming up into some transitional postures, which are going to be different forms of sitting. This is how we're developing the ability to support ourselves upright, this coordination. So this phase, the ground is supporting us, but as we continue to develop, it starts to support us less and we support ourselves more. So neurologically, on a deep physical level and cognitive level, we are building that movement foundation, that ability to support ourselves. So once we're in those sitting positions and we can start to support ourselves a little bit more, well, then we start to take that next step, trying to stand up, maybe finding ourselves in a little bit more of a hinge position, supporting ourselves by grabbing onto certain things and pulling ourselves up. So we start to see some of these primal patterns develop from this process of just going from the ground into these transitional positions, eventually into standing, and then eventually into gait, walking, running, all that stuff. That whole progression is something I love to focus on in my practice, in my programs, as well as working with my clients one-on-one. And what's cool about that is, like I said, we go from a lot of support and we can start to develop this connection through the body, through that interaction with the ground, with gravity. And then that can help us rebuild the foundation that we once had as a kid. A lot of times, just with age, sedentary lifestyle, getting stuck in certain patterns or certain ways of exercising, a lot of this variety and this kind of neurological ability to move freely, it disappears. But what's cool is we can tap back into it. When we start to feel safe, connected, and strong in these patterns, we typically move better without having to think about it. That excites me a ton. I don't want you to have to think all the time about what you're doing when you're moving. When it comes to being free physically, when it comes to being athletic and dynamic, we just want to be able to access that stuff. It's not something that we should have to think about, hey, I got to get into this perfect position and do this. You're confident, you're capable in your abilities, and you're able to reflexively move freely. Huge benefit of practicing this stuff, and it's going to support any other type of movement that you're doing because you are building that foundation. This is what comes first. So we've got that human developmental movement. You can think about this as floor, and then we take it into ground. So this is the quadrupedal positions and movements. We already talked about them a little bit, but in this phase, this is where we progress them and intensify them off of those developmental building blocks. So this is going to be that ground-based movement, the crawling, the locomotion, the transitional movements performed in that all fours position. This quadrupedal movement is typically what people think of when they hear the term primal movement, and for good reason. It's an obvious progression of those developmental patterns. It's fun and challenging. It's a great way to build full body strength, mobility, and athleticism, and it has a lot of carryover into different activities, lifestyle activities. Let's just say the obvious one here, at least for me, is something that I want to maintain as long as I possibly can in my life, and that is that ability to get up and down off the ground. So spending time doing these movements that might look like breakdancing or capoeira or ghost jujitsu, whatever it is, they're amazing for practicing that foundation that's going to apply to you changing levels. So that takes us to this final level, which is more of these bipedal positions and movements. The reason I include these bipedal positions and movements in this primal movement structure is because these are the positions and movements that are most essential for daily human function. We are bipedal. We can't ignore that. So as much as I love getting on the mat or the ground over there and moving around like an animal, I think it's amazing stuff and something that we all can be practicing every single day, and it's going to provide us with some benefit. We also got to recognize that most of the stuff we do is from this standing position. And what do we do out of this standing position? We hinge, we squat, we lunge in different directions, we pull in different directions, we push in different directions, we twist, and all that combines into patterns of locomotion. Can also apply these same movements to what we see on the ground. So for example, if we look at crawling, when we're in that quadruped or cat position, we're in this kind of squat hinge position. We are striding forward, and those strides are going to involve this pulling in one area of the body and then pushing in the other. So for instance, if I'm crawling, I'm pulling here. And then you can't see my feet right now, but I'm pushing with my feet. If I were to reverse directions, it'd be the opposite. So I'd be pushing with my hands and actually pulling with my feet. There's some twisting component to that, and all that combines for locomotion, moving forward, backward, in whatever direction. So to summarize this entire primal movement structure, we have those three phases that are working from the ground up: that human developmental, that quadrupedal, and then bipedal movement combine into a powerful practice called primal movement, and it really encompasses everything. I know that you can start to look at different modalities and create a lot of separation in your movement, but when you break it down into what is most essential here, everything we discussed in this video, if I go pick up a kettlebell, I can still think about that press, or maybe I'm going down into a squat, or is there some twisting component to it? You can really start to map everything that you're doing with your movement, with these different forms of training or modalities, into one simple to use structure. And because we understand those levels and how they build on each other, we can always come back to that foundational stuff, the floor movement, the ground movement, and how that's going to provide a lot of context for what we do as we navigate through most of our daily activities on 2 feet. The benefits of combining all 3 phases of primal movement: real world strength, mobility, and athleticism. Physical capability, physical freedom. You're going to be able to do things without thinking about them. You're going to be able to do things that you didn't think you'd be able to do. I surprise myself all the time. I have clients that surprise themselves all the time when given a particular task. And because they've built this foundation, they are instinctually stronger, more athletic, and more mobile. And that's really fun to see. The other thing that I really love about this is it's adaptable. So I mentioned a lot of this is bodyweight movement that you can do at home. You can do in the park, you can do at the gym. You also can scale it up with weights, with more resistance training at some point, if that's something that you're interested in. So it's very adaptable. It's very convenient. The last thing, it's fun. It's really fun. The biggest benefit that I get out of this practice is that I enjoy it. It's something that's easy for me to show up for. I know that I can continue to progress in a lot of different ways. It's great to share with people. There's a lot of research on play and fun and enjoyment when it comes to learning. The fact of the matter is we learn a lot quicker and we make a lot more relative connections, not so much of this linear path. I do this, I do this, I do this. We actually learn how to relate to our environment, relate to certain circumstances or experiences. And through that, we become a more reflexive and responsive human, not somebody that has to think our way through things. We simply get to be and then respond to the situation in front of us. So I hope that last bit makes sense. It's kind of a weird ramble. For me, I continue to try to put it into words, but the best thing you can do is practice it with this primal movement. So how do you do that? I know I've got a bunch of workouts on this channel, a lot of resources, movement tutorials. It can be a lot to navigate and it might be tricky to know where you start. I also get some feedback on, hey, this workout was a little too tough for me, or this is hurting my knees. If this rings true to your experience, I highly recommend you get some structure with the Primal 45 program. This is the structure that I wish I had when starting Primal Movement. You have a lot of different moves. How do you piece them together? How do you get a good workout in like 35, 45 minutes? That's what I've designed in Primal 45. There's 4 different phases, and this is designed for the true beginner and somebody that understands what they're doing, but needs a little bit more structure to have a consistent practice with it. Those reps are really what's going to allow you to level up and do this in a progressive and safe manner. The program also includes all 3 of the phases that we discussed in this video. So you have the Human Developmental Movement, the Quadrupedal Movement, and the Bipedal Movement. By the end of this program, you'll be able to transition between all 3, which I think is an excellent representation of human capability and athleticism. So that's something that you can look forward to. You'll also be able to string movements together into your own sequences and flows. All that stuff that you see, the sexy stuff, you'll be able to do that through the 10-week program. I can't recommend it enough. It's $97. It's a do-it-yourself program. Check the description below and hop on that. If you are somebody that has some specific needs and you want those addressed with some more personalized Primal Movement program, I'll also drop my booking link in the description below. We can hop on a 10-15 minute call. I can run you through some different options and see if that's a good fit for you. If you're loving the content, you love the workouts, and you want to support the channel, you can also hop in the $5 a month membership. You get access to all these smoov workouts ad-free, and you get to support this channel so I can put out more workouts, more content just like this, so you can tap into your physical potential, your physical freedom, and continue to level up your human experience. That's all I've got for you in this video. Let me know what you found most valuable and applicable to your life, your practice. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. I will see you next time. Stay smoov.